Maggie Carter had never considered herself lucky until the letter arrived. To Margaret Carter, the sole heir of Hollow Grove Manor, the words swam before her eyes. Her great-aunt Agatha, a woman she'd met exactly once at a funeral, where Agatha had whispered, "You've got death in your eyes, girl," before cackling into her handkerchief, had left her a crumbling mansion in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. Maggie, a broke freelance writer with a caffeine addiction and a cat named Tofu, saw this as either divine intervention or the setup to a horror movie. Naturally, she chose optimism. Free house, she toasted with her third espresso of the morning. Tofu meowed in agreement, or possibly protest. 3 days later, Maggie stood in front of Hollow Grove Manor, her enthusiasm waning. The house loomed like a rotten tooth against the gray sky, its windows dark and accusing. The realtor, a twitchy man named Gary, had handed her the keys and sprinted back to his car like he was being chased. "Charming," Maggie muttered, stepping onto the creaking porch. The door groaned open before she could even use the key grate. Either the world's worst locks or a ghost with excellent manners. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of mildew and regret. The walls were lined with portraits of grim-faced ancestors, all judging her life choices. A grand staircase spiraled upward, its banister splintered like it had been clawed at by something desperate. Maggie set down her bags. "Okay, house. Let's get one thing straight, I'm not here to be scared. I'm here to flip you and buy a lifetime supply of oat milk lattes." Somewhere deep in the house, something laughed. Maggie had planned to sleep in one of the less terrifying rooms, preferably one without a portrait of a child whose eyes seemed to follow her. She'd chosen a small bedroom on the second floor, which only had minor bloodstains on the rug. She hoped it was wine. Tofu, however, had other plans. The moment Maggie set up her air mattress, the cat arched his back, hissed at nothing, and bolted under the bed. "Oh, come on," Maggie groaned. "You're a cat. You're supposed to eat ghosts or whatever." A cold draft slithered through the room, extinguishing her lantern. The shadows stretched unnaturally long, and the air grew thick with the scent of roses and something metallic. Then, the whispers started. "Maggie," she froze. "Okay, that's not funny. Gary? If this is a prank, I'm not tipping you." The closet door creaked open. Inside, a pale hand curled around the frame. Maggie's survival instincts kicked in, specifically, the scream and throw things instinct. She grabbed the nearest object, a porcelain doll that definitely hadn't been there before, and hurled it at the closet. The hand retreated with an indignant ow. "Silence," Maggie exhaled. "All right. Either I'm hallucinating from caffeine withdrawal, or this house is definitely haunted." Tofu peeked out from under the bed, glared at her, and then darted out of the room. "Traitor," Maggie muttered. Then, from the hallway, a child's voice giggled. "You're going to die here, Maggie." Maggie sighed. Yeah. Can it wait until after I've had coffee?" Maggie woke up to Tofu standing on her chest, hissing at something behind her. "Okay, buddy, if this is about a spider, I'm gonna need you to." She turned. A woman in a tattered Victorian dress stood at the foot of the bed, her hollow eyes fixed on Maggie. Her mouth stretched into a grin far too wide for a human face. Maggie screamed. The woman screamed back, a high, mocking screech, then vanished into thin air. Tofu gave Maggie a look that said, "I told you so." "All right, new plan," Maggie muttered, throwing off the covers. "We're figuring out what the hell is going on in this house." Downstairs, she found a study lined with mildewed books and a desk that looked like it had been ransacked by a poltergeist. Buried under a stack of yellowed newspapers was a leather-bound journal titled "The Truth of Hollow Grove" in shaky handwriting. "Bingo," Maggie said, blowing dust off the cover. The journal belonged to her great-aunt Agatha, who had apparently spent the last 40 years documenting the manor's unquiet spirits. According to the entries, Hollow Grove was built on land once used for witch trials. Cliché, but okay. The original owner, Ezekiel Hollow, had dabbled in the occult and, big surprise, opened a door he couldn't close. "The dead walk here," Agatha had written. "They hunger. They remember. And they do not like guests." Maggie flipped to the last entry, dated the day before Agatha's death. "I've seen her. The woman in the walls. She's coming for me. Maggie, if you're reading this, run. Maggie snorted. Too late, Auntie. A floorboard creaked behind her. She turned slowly. The Victorian woman was back, now standing inches from her face, her breath smelling of grave dirt and peppermint. You're rude, the ghost hissed. Maggie threw the journal at her. It passed right through, hitting a vase that shattered dramatically. The ghost gasped. That was antique. Then haunt a museum. Maggie snapped. The ghost vanished again, but not before flipping her off. By day 3, Maggie had learned 2 things. The ghosts hated her and that they were terrible at actually killing her. The Victorian woman, Maggie had nicknamed her Karen, was the most persistent. She liked to appear in mirrors, whispering join us before Maggie could finish her skincare routine. The child ghost, now dubbed Tiny Tim, preferred to rearrange her belongings into threatening messages. This morning, Maggie's coffee pod spelled leave or die. Creative, she muttered, popping one into the machine. But decaf? Really? That's just evil. Then there was the third ghost, a hulking figure in a butcher's apron, always lurking in the basement. Maggie avoided him on principle, that is, until she ran out of wine. The cellar was dark, damp, and smelled like something had died there, which, given the circumstances, was likely accurate. As Maggie rummaged through dusty bottles, a low growl echoed from the shadows. The butcher stepped into the dim light, his face a mess of scars and his cleaver dripping with something. Maggie held up a bottle. Red or white? The butcher blinked. Look, I get it, she continued. You're a terrifying murder ghost. But I need this Merlot. Can we negotiate? The butcher tilted his head, then pointed at the stairs. Fine, I'm going. She grabbed the wine and backed away. But if you change your mind, I've got great tips on anger management. Upstairs, Karen and Tiny Tim were waiting, arms crossed. You're still here? Karen sneered. Maggie took a swig straight from the bottle. Bold of you to assume I have anywhere else to go. Tiny Tim sighed. This one's hopeless. Maggie decided it was time to take control of the situation. After all, she was a modern woman with Wi-Fi and a questionable credit score. She could handle a few dead people. I'm going to talk to them, she announced to Tofu, who was busy glaring at a shadow in the corner. Like, properly talk. Maybe they just need therapy. Tofu flicked his tail, unimpressed. Maggie cleared the coffee table, which had recently started bleeding when touched, and arranged a circle of candles, a Ouija board she'd found in the attic, and a bag of tortilla chips, because seances were stressful, and she needed snacks. All right, ghosts, she said, lighting the candles with a lighter that suspiciously wouldn't stay lit. Let's chat like adults. The air grew thick. The Ouija board's planchette twitched. Finally, Karen's voice hissed from the walls. Maggie placed her fingers on the planchette. Okay, first question, why are you all so dramatic? The planchette shot to NO. Fair. She took a chip. Second question, what do you want? The planchette moved slowly. LEAVE. Maggie rolled her eyes. Not happening. I've got squatters' rights now. The candles flared violently. The planchette spun in furious circles before spelling out, DIE. Rude. Then the table levitated. Maggie yelped as her snacks went flying. Tofu bolted. The planchette shot off the board and thumped into the wall like a throwing knife. Karen materialized in front of her, eyes black and mouth stretched too wide. You should have listened. Maggie grabbed a candle and threw wax at her. And you should learn to share space. The ghost screamed, but then, mid-shriek, she flickered and vanished. Silence. Maggie blinked. Huh. Ghost performance issues? Then the real noise started. From deep within the house came a low, guttural growl, something far worse than Karen or the butcher. The walls trembled. The floorboards breathed. Maggie swallowed. Okay. Maybe I should have left. The house was angry. Doors slammed on their own. The portraits wept black tears. Even Tofu, usually full of feline bravado, had retreated into Maggie's backpack, Hissing at nothing, Maggie knew she had to find the source of the haunting, preferably before something ate her. Agatha's journal mentioned a sealed door in the west wing. Maggie had assumed it was metaphorical ghost nonsense, but after tripping over a loose floorboard, which bit her, she found a hidden staircase leading down into pitch-black darkness. Cool, she muttered, flashlight in hand. Just a creepy basement in a murder house. What could go wrong? The stairs groaned under her weight. The air smelled like wet earth and old blood. At the bottom was a door, locked, with strange symbols carved into the wood. Maggie jiggled the handle. Hey, Karen? You wanna open up? I come in peace. Mostly. No answer. She kicked the door. It didn't budge. Then, from behind her, a whisper, wrong key. Maggie spun. Tiny Tim stood there, translucent and frowning. What key? She asked. The ghost pointed to her pocket. Confused, Maggie reached in and pulled out an old iron key she'd never seen before. Okay, either I'm sleepwalking and collecting haunted junk, or you ghosts are really bad at keeping me out. Tim shrugged. You're stubborn. Maggie inserted the key. The lock clicked, the door creaked open, revealing a small, circular room, and in the center, a well, not a decorative one. A real, icy dead people well, with a crumbling stone rim and a darkness that seemed to pulse. Maggie stepped closer. The air was freezing. The whispers were louder here, overlapping in a chorus of pain and rage. Then she saw it. A name. Etched into the well's edge. Ezekiel Hollow. The flashlight flickered. Something gurgled from deep below. Maggie backed away. Nope. The door slammed shut behind her. She was trapped, and whatever was in that well, it was climbing out. The gurgling from the well grew louder, a wet, choking sound, like something drowning but never dying. Maggie's flashlight flickered again, threatening to plunge her into total darkness. Oh, come on, she muttered, smacking it against her palm. Not now. The beam stabilized just in time for her to see fingers, blackened, skeletal, too long to be human, curl over the edge of the well. Maggie's breath caught. Then the thing pulled itself up. It was a grotesque mockery of a man, its body bloated and rotting, its jaw unhinged like a snake's. Its hollow eye sockets fixed on her, and when it spoke, its voice was a chorus of the damned. Maggie Carter. She stumbled back, hitting the door. Locked. Of course it was locked. Okay, listen, she said, voice shaking only slightly. I don't know what beef you've got with my family, but I'm barely related to Agatha. Like, genetically, I'm basically a stranger. The thing, Ezekiel, let out a sound that might have been laughter. It dragged itself forward, leaving a trail of black sludge. You are blood. And blood pays. Maggie's mind raced. The door wouldn't budge. The flashlight was her only weapon, and she doubted whacking this thing with it would do much. Then she remembered Agatha's journal. She fumbled in her pocket, pulling out the crumpled pages she'd stuffed in there earlier. Flipping frantically, she scanned the entries. Ezekiel cannot cross salt, she read aloud. Ezekiel paused. Maggie grinned. Oh, you motherfew. She dumped her emergency snack stash, a bag of pretzel salt, onto the floor between them, drawing a shaky line. Ezekiel hissed, recoiling like a vampire facing garlic. Tricks, it snarled. Yeah, well, you're the one who didn't Google how to haunt properly, Maggie shot back. The salt wouldn't hold forever. She needed a way out. Then, click, the door creaked open behind her. Tiny Tim stood there, eyes wide. Run. Maggie didn't need to be told twice. Back upstairs, Maggie collapsed against the wall, gasping. Tiny Tim hovered nearby, looking more nervous than usual. He's waking up, the ghost whispered. Really waking up? Maggie wiped sweat from her brow. Yeah, no kidding. What's his deal, anyway? Tim fidgeted. He's the first. The one who started it. He made the well, hungry. A chill ran down Maggie's spine. You mean, he fed people to it? And now it wants more. Maggie groaned. Great. A demonic garbage disposal. She needed a plan. Salt wouldn't cut it forever. The ghosts clearly weren't all on Ezekiel's side. Karen seemed to hate everyone equally, and Tim was helping her. Maybe she could use that. "All right, kid," she said, sitting up. "What do you want?" Tim blinked. "Want? Yeah. Ghosts usually haunt for a reason, right? Unfinished business? You help me, I help you. Deal?" Tim hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Find my toy." Maggie raised an eyebrow. "Your toy?" "Mr. Bitey. My dog. He's in the attic." Of course it was in the attic. The creepiest possible place. "Fine," Maggie sighed. "But if I die, I'm haunting you back." The attic was exactly as nightmare-inducing as Maggie expected, cobwebbed, claustrophobic, and smelling like a mix of mothballs and regret. The single hanging bulb flickered ominously as she climbed the rickety stairs, Tofu clutched in her arms like a furry stress ball. "You're a predator," she reminded the cat. "Act like it." Tofu sneezed. Tim's ghostly form wavered ahead of her, pointing to an old cedar chest tucked beneath the eaves. "There." Maggie set Tofu down. He immediately bolted back downstairs and pried open the chest. Inside, beneath yellowed baby clothes and a suspiciously stained quilt, was a ragged plush dog, one button eye missing, it seemed splitting. "Mr. Bitey." Tim gasped, reaching for it. His spectral fingers passed through the toy. His face fell. Maggie picked it up. The moment she did, the attic shifted. The walls groaned, the temperature plummeted, and suddenly she wasn't alone. Dozens of ghostly children materialized around her, their hollow eyes fixed on the toy. "You found him," whispered a girl with braids. "We've been looking forever," murmured a boy missing half his face. Maggie's grip tightened on the plush. Y'all also lost toys?" "No," Tim said quietly. "We are the lost toys." A beat. Maggie's stomach dropped. "You mean Ezekiel fed the naughty ones to the well," the girl finished. "But we didn't stay down there." Maggie's horror was interrupted by a sudden thud from below. The house shuddered. "He's coming," Tim said urgently. Another thud. Closer. Maggie stuffed Mr. Bitey in her hoodie pocket. "Okay, change of plans, how do we end this?" The ghost children exchanged glances. Then, in unison, burn it. Maggie stood in the foyer, surrounded by ghosts, Karen, the butcher, Tim, the children, all watching as she poured the last of her emergency vodka over Ezekiel's portrait. "Just to be clear," she said, gripping a matchbook from the ironically named Hollow Grove B&B, "arson is illegal." "So is murder," Karen snapped. But Ezekiel didn't care. Fair point. The house trembled again. From the basement, something screeched. Ezekiel knew what they were planning. "All right, folks," Maggie said, striking a match. "If this goes wrong, I'd like it noted that I died doing something really stupid." She tossed the match. The portrait went up in flames, but instead of normal fire, the flames burned black, spreading unnaturally fast. The ghost screamed, not in pain, but in triumph. The walls bled. The floor split. And from the darkness beneath, Ezekiel erupted, a towering mass of rot and rage. "You dare!" Maggie grabbed Mr. Bitey and hurled him into the fire. "We dare!" the ghost children roared. The toy burned. Ezekiel howled, and then, silence. The fire vanished. The house stood still. Maggie coughed, waving away smoke. Did it work?" A warm hand touched her shoulder. She turned. Tim stood there, solid for the first time, holding Mr. Bitey. "Thank you," he whispered. Then, one by one, the ghosts faded, not in fear, but in peace. Karen was last. She eyed Maggie, then smirked. "You're almost tolerable." And then she was gone. Maggie exhaled. Tofu meowed from the doorway, tail flicking. "Yeah," Maggie muttered. "Let's never do that again." The morning sun streamed through the cracked windows of Hollow Grove Manor, and for the first time since Maggie had arrived, the house felt quiet. Not just silent, but peaceful. No whispering walls. No ghostly apparitions. Just the faint smell of burnt vodka and the comforting weight of tofu curled up on her feet. Maggie sat up, wincing at the charred remains of Ezekiel's portrait. Well, that happened. She wandered through the house, half expecting Karen to pop out and critique her life choices, but nothing stirred. The air was lighter, the shadows just shadows. Even the basement door, previously oozing menace, now just looked like a sad, damp entryway. Her phone buzzed. A text from Gary the realtor. "Hey, you still alive?" Maggie snorted and typed back, "Barely. Also, the house is no longer haunted." "You're welcome." 3 dots appeared. Then, seriously? Seriously. Now get over here. We need to talk about a very generous commission for selling a demon-free mansion. She tossed her phone aside and eyed the pile of Agatha's journals. Maybe the old bat hadn't been entirely crazy, just mostly. Tofu yawned and stretched, tail flicking as he trotted toward the kitchen. Maggie followed, only to stop dead in the doorway. On the counter, her coffee pods were arranged in a new message: "Thanks for the help. And by the way, you snore." Maggie burst out laughing. 6 months later, Hollow Grove Manor was almost unrecognizable. Fresh paint covered the bloodstains. The creaky floors had been sanded and polished. And the murder well in the basement? Now a very chic wine cellar. Maggie sat on the porch swing, sipping her oat milk latte as a sold sign was hammered into the front lawn. Gary wiped his brow. "I still can't believe you pulled this off." "Believe it," Maggie said, grinning. "And hey, if the new owners hear weird noises, just tell them it's probably the pipes." Gary paled. She laughed and tossed him the keys. "Relax. The ghosts are gone. Mostly." That night, as Maggie packed up the last of her things, she paused at the front door. "All right, you spooky freeloaders," she announced to the empty house. "I'm out. Try not to scare the next guy too much." A breeze ruffled her hair, almost like a playful shove. Maggie smirked. Yeah. Love you too." As she loaded Tofu into the car, a single light flickered in the attic window. If she squinted, she could have sworn she saw a small figure waving. Maggie waved back, then she drove off, leaving Hollow Grove and its slightly less haunted halls behind.